speech. Fellow Toastmasters, please welcome David Chatfield.
Tuesdays were, without doubt, Nadia's favorite days. And all the other children in the orphanage felt the same. Saturdays were fun because they involved field trips around the city. And Thursdays were special because they brought the best pancakes that Nadia had ever tasted. But in Nadia's eyes, neither of those days could compare with Tuesdays. Because Tuesday was Visitor's Day. The day of the week when there was a possibility of going home with the new family. Nadia had been in the orphanage for 6 months. Only 9 months earlier, she'd been celebrating her 11th birthday with her parents and younger brother. When the Civil War in her country reached her village, her family was killed on the first night, and she herself was left for dead after sustaining a number of injuries. As she lay in her bed early on Tuesday morning, her hand went to her cheek and she touched the scar there, a reminder of the night that she'd lost her family. Nadia hated the scar. Not for how it made her look, but for the things that it reminded her of. The destruction of her village was just a part of it. There were also the looks from visitors, smiling, friendly faces who approached from across the courtyard, only to change their expressions when they reached Nadia. She touched her scar again, forced herself to smile, and got ready for Visitor's Day. More than 20 miles away, Simona Nicolescu put on her overcoat, looked in her bathroom mirror, and breathed deeply. She reached into her purse and pulled out a tissue, dabbing at her eyes to wipe away the tears that were making an appearance. For the better part of 8 months, she felt nothing but numb. Her husband and 3 children were gone, lost to the conflict. For weeks after their deaths, she herself hadn't wanted to live, and it took the care and kindness of several people to help her get over the grief. She looked in the mirror and said, "I can do this. It's time." A few weeks earlier, a relief worker had told her about the orphanage in town and how many more children were there as a result of the conflict. Just last week, she realized that she wanted to go to the orphanage. At first, she felt guilty. She convinced herself that she was betraying her own family, her own children. But then she realized that if she could bring happiness into the life of just one of these children and into her own, how could she resist that? Simona looked in the mirror again, put a scarf on over her head, as she repeated the words, "I can do this. It's time." When the gates of the courtyard opened that morning, the first thing that Nadia noticed was that the number of visitors was so small. Usually 15 to 20 couples waited for the chance to enter first thing in the morning. But today, it was only 4. Each couple crossed the courtyard to meet Nadia. But once again, the reaction to her scar was the same as it was every Visitor's Day. An unease at being in her presence. The scar providing an unpleasant reminder of the conflict. When the last couple had passed her by, Nadia could feel tears in her eyes. She ran to her room, mad at herself for reacting this way, but powerless to stop it. She threw herself on her bed and was soon asleep. Nearly 3 hours later, Nadia felt herself being awakened by a hand on her shoulder. She looked up and saw that it was the administrator, a tall woman who'd been running the orphanage for 12 years. The administrator spoke. Nadia, there's someone outside that I'd like you to meet. Nadia shook her head. I don't want to meet anybody today. The administrator smiled warmly and said, I understand. But I've told her about you. And I think you want to meet her. Nadia got out of bed and took the administrator's hand as they walked to the courtyard. When they got there, Nadia saw that the courtyard was full of activity. Several new couples had arrived during her nap, and her friends were busy speaking with them excitedly. But there underneath the orange tree, seated on a bench, was a woman, sitting quietly. Nadia and the administrator walked to her, and the woman rose to greet them. Nadia, the administrator said, I'd like you to meet Simona. Nadia extended her hand. It's very nice to meet you. Simona took Nadia's hand. She held it for a long time. She looked at the scar on Nadia's face. Nadia could feel her looking at it. And then something happened that Nadia didn't expect. Simona smiled. It's very nice to meet you, Nadia. Simona let go of Nadia's hand and untied the scarf over her head. Nadia gasped. There on Simona's face was a scar, a virtual twin to the one that Nadia had. Nadia smiled, and Simona took her hand again. Tell me about yourself, Mr. Toastmaster.